check it out. DVR. Oh, we are live. Okay. All right. Let's get these links out on to X, and then we'll start. Let's see if this one worked on YouTube. Ooh. I don't know if YouTube is working. Let's see if I can fix that. The user is not enabled for live streaming. Let's see. Guess we'll just be live on Rumble today. Oh, only 24 hours till I can stream. I guess we'll be going live on here on YouTube on, I guess Wednesday. That's fine. Well, then we'll just go with Rumble today. Copy. Paste. All right. I hope everybody's enjoying start of college basketball season. Started the day, 8 a.m. It's been nice. Guess I've given everybody enough time to join. So let's start. So as we all know, SNAP benefits were discontinued on November 1st, so Saturday, and 1 in 8 Americans receive SNAP benefits according to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. These are people who are unemployed, underemployed, military families, veterans, disabled, seniors, and foster children. Some of these are dependents with reason. I would argue the disabled, seniors, foster children would all be those that have reason. The elderly, disabled veterans, military families who don't receive enough pay, and the truly disabled. But others are dependents with absolutely no reasoning. These would be the unemployed, the underemployed, and those disabled due to obesity, chronic fatigue syndrome, and the like. These aren't real excuses, I think, as we all know. These are people seeming either just to not want to do work or feel they have some innate value that makes them feel as the taxpayer must serve them. You could call it entitlement if you want. So now, why may these people not want to work? There could be various reasons. Maybe it's hard work making money, making their own money. And they don't want to work for anybody else. They're just reasons. But most of us would argue that this isn't an excuse because life itself simply is hard. There's a percentage of this group that would argue that the companies they work for don't serve them. And I would argue, unfortunately, this crowd may be right. So let's take a trip back in time over 100 years ago to a commonly forgot about court case, which case would be Dodge Brothers versus Ford in 1919. At this time, Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company, was doing well, innovated the assembly line a couple of years earlier, and this allowed Ford to produce products with, at the time, unprecedented speed and efficiency. Hence why Henry Ford's company was doing well. At the same time, the Dodge brothers, a shareholder of Ford Motor Company, had invested in the Ford with the goal of eventually accruing enough wealth to start their own automotive company. At the time, Ford Motor Corporation was paying out huge dividends to its shareholders, like more than any other stock on the exchange at the time. And Henry Ford sought to improve the lives of his employees by cutting the dividends to the shareholders and reinvesting more of the wealth back into his own company. He was thinking more long-term, like retention of employees, and paying what was double the local going wage to his employees at the time. This means if the average wage in town was $10, Ford sought to pay his employees $20. This would not only improve the lives of his employees, but it would hope that he could earn more trust from them in the long run. You could think of this not only as like a thank you for helping Ford amass great wealth, but to ensure all his employees remain loyal. This was hard work. I mean, they were assembling cars. The Dodge brothers saw this as a problem. Cutting the dividends would mean that they would get less money and in turn slow their competitive automotive venture with Ford. So eventually the court would rule in favor of the Dodge brothers, and that Henry Ford was acting against the interest of the shareholder wealth maximization. Here's the problem. If you think past the short-term gains, such as the Dodge brothers had interest, you would likely see in 10 to 20 years that these policies would have helped shareholders more. Things like improving employee wages would allow for greater retainment of high-value employees, with less time and money wasted training new individuals and hiring new employees to replace those leaving for better wages. So in the long run, these people would get better wages, keep their current job, and then Ford wouldn't have to go out and search for new employees and then train them to do work on the assembly line. He also sought to reduce the margins on new cars, allowing in the long term a greater market share and brand notoriety for the Ford brand, both of which would overall and positively impact shareholders. Now you may be asking yourself, Sam, how does this impact SNAP food benefits? So here we go. 1 in 8 Americans are on SNAP. People are on SNAP because they don't feel benefited by the company they work for, often underpaid. They don't receive benefits, or they don't receive enough benefits for the work they're doing. Think industrial jobs. So these companies are publicly traded and are handcuffed and scared to be sued by shareholders for making their employees' lives better at this point. This has been the case for 100 years because of this president ruling. So let's do like a case study on publicly traded versus private companies to see the differences in the quality of life in their employees. Let's look at publicly traded company Casey's. It's a convenience store, gas station, whatever you want to call it, and private company Buc-ee's, and see if we can't spot any difference in what's offered to their employees. So I'm going to take you to Springfield, Missouri, where as of 2024, the population was 170,596. The median individual income is $29,511, and the median household income is about $45,948. In this town, there's a Buc-ee's and a few Casey's stores. At Casey's, the average hourly rate for a run-of-the-mill employee is about $14 to $16. These would be janitors, cashiers, food workers. At Buc-ee's, in the same town in Springfield, Missouri, these jobs are $18 to $21 an hour and offer the same, if not better, employee benefits. So which one would you pick? And if you were subsidized by SNAP benefits, would you choose to go to work at Casey's knowing Buc-ee's pays more but weren't hiring? I'd argue likely not. You would continue to take the handouts as long as the one position you wanted wasn't open. And if there was even a chance to get that one position, you may have become so complacent and comfortable living off of others you feel fine continuing to abstain from productive society. Here lies the issue. The combination of these cases precedent not only disincentivizes companies, but it also disincentivizes companies to make their workers' lives better. But SNAP benefits create a dependent class that are willing to abstain from productive society. So this creates a toxic relationship, one that slowly but surely, able to erode and collapse a society. So what do we do? Well, the first obvious answer would be to get the presiding case law of Dodge Brothers versus Ford thrown out, as it is the only reason it was successful in the first place is because when Henry Ford was on the stand during cross-examination, he claimed Ford was organized to do as much good as we can everywhere for everybody concerned, and incidentally to make money. He was asked, "Incidentally," Henry Ford said, "Yes." This could be the slip-up that made short-term profits for shareholders the standard over Henry Ford's long-term plan that would help both his employees and the shareholders in the long run. Now, where else do we see this? I would argue the most glaring example is retail. Remember when Amazon was offering fairly solid wages during COVID? The wages have not risen with the cost of living. The non-monetary benefits for employees have seemingly not increased. The only thing I'm aware of is that job security is plummeting as the company plans to phase out workers over the next few years with artificial intelligence. So what did Amazon workers truly get from their company? Seemingly deferred unemployment, training for an obsolete career, and that is if they could manage the strenuous conditions on the job site to keep their job. I've heard it's rather hard. So let's stay in the retail sector a little longer, as it is one of the main drivers of the US economy these days. Think back to the last time you walked into a Walmart or Target. Now think back to when you were a kid walking through Walmart or Target. Are more checkout lanes open or less? Are the checkout lines longer? Do the shelves seem to be better stocked? Or do you notice things are often missing? What about the cleanliness? Do they seem as well maintained as they used to? What about the employees? Are there more or less? Are they more or less helpful to you, the customer? This toxic relationship between the knock-on effects of the Dodge Brothers versus Ford ruling and the liberal allowance the SNAP benefits set this stage. Americans don't feel the pride nor the obligation to work anymore to survive. This is what I would call true corporate social responsibility. The responsibility to take care of your own employees so the taxpayer doesn't have to. We see companies that go out for photo ops claiming, "We fed the homeless today," but are you feeding your employees? As humans, we have to take care of our own first, and overturning the presiding case law of Dodge Brothers versus Ford would open the doors and cut the red tape for companies to once again provide for their employees the benefits they deserve, which makes every single person's life better, even the shareholders. Now you may ask, what would this look like? You may see publicly traded companies offering wages and benefits like Buc-ee's. You may see people coming back and forth to work in droves because they will work at companies that have the employee's best interest in mind. If Target or Walmart could pay you double what it normally does and offer better benefits, would you go work there? I think many people would. Would it fix some societal problems such as part of the 1 in 8 Americans in the dependent class? I'd argue it certainly would reduce the number of dependents in our dependent class because possibly they would be able to see the other side. The side where you earn your keep with your company and you are proud of your work once again. And you know you can depend on your company, which could be the most important part. People would realize that going out and doing a job would give them a more fulfilling life than asking for handouts such as SNAP benefits. These benefits were never meant to be a permanent fix, except for those who are truly disabled. They were for those who fell on hardships. But you cannot look me in the face and realistically claim that you as an able-bodied person fell on hardship your entire life. You just can't. Especially if there are companies out there like Buc-ee's almost offering the world to gas station employees. Think of the benefits of working for a non-public company. Typically, a rather understanding staff, normally at a competitive level or better than local pay, and consider, would it be helpful if every company would need to be at least competitive to these practices? As we stand right now, public companies cannot push towards the model of long-term success. So I would say, let Americans' dollars do the bidding, uncuff the companies, and let Americans choose who they do and don't want to do business with. I can almost guarantee you that as Americans caught wind of truly corporately responsible companies, ones that had long-term plans, not just for its employees, but also its shareholders, such as Ford Motor Company in the late 1910s. This is not only where they would spend their dollar, but where they would flock to work as well. So who are the beneficiaries? Not only the working class, but the dependent class, who will finally see that working is not only something to do during the day, but something that makes their lives and families' lives better. Would this not be the goal? Improve the overall economy while limiting the dependent class to who it was meant for, the dependents, all while establishing a more laissez-faire or hands-off system, allowing corporations the room for changes to be made, drastically change the direction of their companies for both the employees and the shareholders. The public taxpayer should never be held responsible for the failures of companies, particularly in caring for their employees. But in a very sick and twisted way, I'm arguing it's exactly how we got here. If the Dodge brothers weren't as selfish in the short term by bringing Henry Ford to court and allowed for Ford to establish his long-term plan benefiting both his employees and shareholders, where may we be after 100 years? I'd argue much better off. I'm not sure if we would have the rise of a dependent class, the 1 in 4 Americans, a corporate model that disincentivizes people to work, an argument every year over whether to raise the minimum wage or not, a nation $38 trillion in debt. I'm not sure after 100 years we would have any of this, but I am sure it would be a freer system in which companies actually had to remain competitive with one another in both sales and quality of life of their employees. Now, wouldn't that get the number down from 1 in 8 Americans? I sure hope so. Now, some people may argue they are dependents for a reason. They can't work. And I would offer you this. Think of those that choose to be unemployed or receive supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits that are deemed too fat to work and therefore disabled. Would you choose to pay for those people's lifestyles, or would you not hold them to the same standard as you would yourself? Or do they choose to not hold themselves to the same standard as they hold the people paying for them accountable to? No matter how you want to look at it, it seems like a bad faith relationship. Looking around, I guess I'm not going to get any YouTube chats today, but don't see anything in Rumble. All right, well, tomorrow I'm going to be starting a little earlier. Had a bit of a technical difficulty getting it started up today. I was shooting for 4:45. That's going to be the goal every day. And then Tuesdays, I'm going to be going live at 4:30 because I have plans after on Tuesdays. So to all my people on the East Coast, I want to thank you for listening to me on your ride home. To my people further west, I hope you finish up the workday strong. Get home safe as well. Talk to you soon.